Hello, everybody. This is Ryan from My Try Running Programs, and I'm making my triumphant return to YouTube after kind of taking a lazy break, I suppose, for the last, I think, somewhere around 8 to 9 months. And there's good reason for why I ended up taking that break. But in any case, like most runners, I like to start off the year with a 2023 goals video. And admittedly, mine might be a bit more esoteric comparative to some of my peers on YouTube. But I do have 5 goals, and I'll go through them pretty quickly. My first one is really being more consistent. And I don't mean that so much in terms of the YouTube channel, because this channel for me is truly just a hobby. I enjoy putting out the videos, and I enjoy the feedback that I receive on them. And people will message me on Strava and let me know that they've been watching the videos and that they're learning and they're getting stuff from it, which is fantastic. I really appreciate that. But really, the consistency starts more with running. And to kind of get to the point of what my struggles were last year, as you can see at the start of the year, by and large, minus one kind of weird week there, I was putting out a lot of good weeks in the 40, 50, even close to 60-mile range. And at this time, if my memory serves me correctly, this is when I was training with the Brooks kind of marathon method, their more advanced program. And it's a great program. I was doing great on it. And then unfortunately, I was doing a HIT program, a high intensity interval training program known as Insanity. For those of you who are Sean T fans, my wife and I were doing it together. I was just kind of supporting her and her goals of trying to lose a little weight. And I was doing a tuck jump to work on my core. And of course, I ended up injuring my right sacral joint for a solid 2 weeks. It was brutal. I had to wear a TENS unit for a couple of weeks just to get back to normal. And then right around this time, kind of just coincidentally, I was starting an online business alongside my normal career. And then unfortunately, I ended up getting COVID in July. And that just kind of, I think that 3 month stretch just threw me for a loop. And if I was to use it as an excuse to say that ultimately that was the reason why, I kind of, as you can see, took the rest of the year pretty easy in the 15 to 20-mile range for most of those weeks. That's ultimately what happened. So I do want to stay more consistent. And to do that, I'm looking at running in a few different ways. One, I'm trying to do a lot more base building this year. If you look at a lot of my old content, I talk about my weight a lot, and I know that can be controversial in the running scene, but a lot of the data just simply points to the lighter you weigh, the faster you run, as long as you're not just burning off a lot of muscle tissue. And so in my case, I have a little bit of fat to burn. I'm right around consistently weighing in the 188, 189, even sometimes a little bit near 190 if I'm carrying a little bit of water weight. Whereas if you look at my older content, a lot of the time I'm around 185 pounds in those videos. So I have probably a good 5 pounds to lose before I really even want to get serious about training. And then at that time, I'm going to try to find my natural weight where my body wants to kind of peak at in terms of where I can dip down to. But I always make kind of my hard and fast baseline of 180 as the lowest I will go. Because I am somebody who also lifts weights and does other things, and I just don't want to get too skinny. So 180 is kind of my baseline of as low as I would go. But I want to find that weight naturally. And so if I'm going to get there, I have to be consistent, but I have to stay healthy when I'm running too. And that's really important. It will be actually one of my future goals. So that's my first goal, is just to be more consistent. The more consistent that I'm training, I think the more fun I'm going to have with running. And so I'm not going to get too worked up about what training program I'm using at any given time. I'll talk about a couple of the programs I'm thinking of using later in the year, but that's that number one goal. Number two for me is actually increasing my vertical gain. And so if you look at the start of my year here, I started off with about a 20-ish mile week, and at this week I'm trending towards about 40 miles this week. By Sunday, when this video goes up, I should be at the 40-mile mark for the week. And you can see all of the weeks this year are around 1,000 or more feet of vertical gain comparative to last year, where I ran maybe about 29,000 feet in total vertical gain. Where I live in California, it's relatively flat, but where I work in California, there's a lot of hills. So I'm trying to run a little bit more on my lunchtime at work. Also, because I work at a university, when the university is really quiet during the school breaks, it's a little bit more feasible for me to run here. Otherwise, my students might kind of run into me and it can just get kind of weird, and I'd rather avoid that. So really for me to get that vertical gain, I'm going to try to run here a little bit more on the weekends, my breaks, and certainly during longer extended breaks like our summer break here. So last year I was right around 29,000 feet. This year you can see I'm already at a little bit more than 5,000 feet. So if I was to keep this pace, I would effectively more than double my overall vertical gain from last year. As the old saying goes, uh, kind of hill training is speed work in disguise, right? So my goal is to try to really use a lot more hill work to try to build up more strength in my legs to keep me from getting injured, which will keep me more consistent, certainly with my first goal. And then secondly, I think it will make me a little bit faster. So those two reasons are really kind of the sub reasons behind that second goal of trying to increase my vertical gain when training this particular year. Now, going into that in terms of being consistent and trying to get a little bit faster, right now I'm kind of in a weird place with running where I'm trying to decide what do I really want to do? Do I want to chase the marathon PR? And a lot of people who've seen my videos will see a lot of content that's really focused on marathon training and breaking that PR for me. And really, my goal, I've put it out there before, is that I want to run a Boston qualifying time in the 18 to 35 male category. That is the obviously the fastest time you can run as a male in terms of what you would have to run to qualify for Boston. So last year, that was, well, really 2 years ago in 2021, that was a goal I started the year with, was to run a Boston qualifying time. And I kind of knew that was an extreme reach goal. And then as I was training throughout the year, and if you watch a lot of that older content, you'll see that I felt pretty good to run around 3:15. And in that December of that year, I ran the California International Marathon. And for the first 20 miles, I was running a very good run. I was probably going to run about a 3:10 to a 3:15 marathon. Then, as the old story goes for many runners, as I was running a marathon, I hit the wall and pretty bad at that. And so those last 6 miles were very, very slow, and it took my overall average down to, as you can see here, a little bit under 3:27 for the marathon. So not necessarily a time that was bad for me. I mean, it was a 40-minute PR for me. It was something to be proud of, but I knew I left a lot on the course that day. And so certainly, it taught me a lot about how to fuel for a marathon. It taught me a lot about how I was training and maybe how it just wasn't enough to get there. So that gets to this idea of, is this the year to chase that? If so, I'm eyeing the Long Beach Marathon in October as a potential place to go. If I feel like my training is going exceptional through the spring and the summer, then I might just take a crack at running the fastest marathon that I can this fall. If not, I'm thinking of taking about a 12, maybe 18, or even 24-month approach. I have about a little under two, or a little bit more, I should say, than 2.5 years to ultimately hit the goal to qualify for Boston. I'm 32 years old. I'm turning 33 this year. So I have some time, but ultimately I'm on the far end of the time limit. So I need to start kind of getting my gear together if I'm going to make it happen. If I'm not going to run a PR attempt this year, I'm eyeing the Lake Chabot Trail Run, which has a variety of distances. This is up in Northern California. The great thing about the Lake Chabot Trail Run is that it's a really beautiful course. You can see it kind of wraps around the greater Lake Chabot area, which is kind of up near Oakland, for those of you unfamiliar with that area. As you can see, though, with the course, lots of twists and turns, a lot of elevation gain, ultimately around 3,000 feet of elevation gain. So it would not be a PR attempt. I think at best, I'd probably be able to run about a 3 hour and 30-minute marathon there, if I'm being totally honest with myself. But if I train to run this event, I feel like it could give me a huge stimulus for 2024 and would be basically almost like an extended year-long base build to build up my mileage, my speed work ability, really build up even just the musculoskeletal system to handle all of this training. So there's a lot of there's really, my gut is telling me to take this route this year and to start really slow this year, just run a lot of mileage, get your weight down, and then start to build up the speed work in the spring and the summer and do some really kind of a true marathon training, either to the Hal Higdon Advanced 2 marathon program or even going back to the Brooks Advanced marathon program, and following one of those programs to completion, then taking a little break and doing another one of those, and then going into this ultimate marathon. So that's where I'm at. The Long Beach Marathon, though, is so intriguing to me because it's a really fast course. If you're a running YouTuber fan, I really recommend going back and watching an older video from Chris Mocco where he actually won the event. It really is a motivating video. It makes me want to run this event. And as you can see from the footage they show here, it's a really pretty event. Uh, but if I go there, I don't end up running a PR, I know that could be a real confidence killer for me. So I have to kind of play this by ear a little bit. So this third goal really comes down to, do I want to run a fast marathon, or do I want to take my time and really get to a much bigger PR? I feel like if I take this time to build appropriately this year, it's going to be a tough choice for me, to be honest, but I'll see how it goes as the year goes on. Then the last two are really basic things. I want to have a little bit more fun with my training. When I go back and I look at Strava and I look at all of this lower weeks, I have to be honest with you, running was not a priority for me at that time, which is really unlike me. When I started running in 2017, I did it like most people to lose weight, to get a little bit more healthy. And then I fell in love with it and started running a bunch of different events. It didn't even matter if I was PRing, I was just having a good time going out and running at these different events. Now, for me, honestly, I have plenty of fun just training. I'm one of those people who can just go out and just run. And this year has been so much fun trying some new things. Trying to get more vertical gain, for example, is such a simple, silly little goal, but it's making running a lot more fun for me. And I'm not becoming a slave to some of the statistics. I'm going to share a lot of statistics this year on my channel. I'm going to try to improve kind of the reviews that I'm doing of the running programs by providing more data. Because before, admittedly, it was just kind of like, here's the mileage I'm running, and here's the outcome of that run or the program. Basically, I started this time and I ended at this time. And that's helpful. I mean, it gives you the overall, improvement of what I got from it, but it doesn't show you some of the finer details. I don't want to be a slave to this type of data, but it is important, right? So on Runalyze, there's a variety of different data you can use. My favorite thing is seeing how the VO2 max, their estimate is changing over time. And if you go back to kind of my entire set of data from when I got my Garmin watch, you can see what I have are these very natural peaks and valleys from the high 40s to then the low 50s in the VO2 max, sometimes getting up into the kind of the mid 50s. Naturally, I think I can improve this dramatically. But you can see it last year to me felt like really from kind of August on, I've just been waffling. I've not really committed to anything. And so what I really want to see in this particular chart as the year goes on, you're going to see peaks and valleys as I'm taking time off after a training cycle, but I'm hoping to see a bigger increase, a more consistent kind of staying in the low 50s during my rest cycles and going higher and higher during my training cycles. We can see ultimately what that max ends up being, but I'm going to try to share a lot more of the data that you can find here on Runalyze, because even though I'm still just a free member, I think they provide a lot of really good data on their site. So that's certainly something that I'm going to try to do, is use a little bit more data to not actually just help you guys learn more from what I'm getting out of my running programs, but actually make it a little bit more fun, because I'm a nerd. I like this stuff. I like talking about supplements. I like talking about the kind of statistical data behind how my running is improving. So this will be I hope will be a really big help to you all as runners. And the last component of this is just training safe. I'm going to do a lot less adjunctive training outside of running. I'm someone who's getting in, if you go to last year, for example, I got in, a little bit under 1,500 miles. It's pretty pedestrian for somebody who's taking running seriously. But let's say this year I get more to 2,000 or 2,500 miles. I'm not necessarily advocating that I will, but let's just say that I did. Then do I really need to do a HIIT workout on top of that each day? Or do I need to do a ton of weightlifting, right? Maybe instead of lifting 4 or 5 times a week, maybe lift 3 times a week and do abs 3 times a week. I think that additional training is really beneficial and has helped me a ton with my running, but it doesn't need to dominate and then impact my running negatively. So I have to kind of, be a little bit smarter, not get those types of injuries that end up taking you out for a long time. Because even in December of this year, I went on a cruise with my wife and my daughter. I'm hitting the lat pull down machine and I ended up pulling the heck out of my back. And so when I came back from the cruise, I had to basically take a week down from all types of training just to recover. So there's just things like that where I have to be a little more sensible. Like everybody, I'm a slave to looking at myself in the mirror in terms of checking, body composition and how I'm improving. I'm a slave to all of this data, but I can be a little bit smart about it too. So that would be my fifth and final goal of training a little bit more safely. So with that in mind, I'll kind of stop my video here, but I would say as the year goes on, you're going to see more shoe reviews. I've been running in a bunch of different shoes. I'd love to share kind of how those have been going for me. And I think a lot of them are really great values that people probably aren't buying because they're probably a little bit out of the more popular brands, if you will. And then I will certainly be talking about a variety of running training programs this year. I believe Hal Higdon Advanced 2 and the Brooks Marathon Advanced program will be probably the two that I'll end up reviewing this year, most likely. And then third and finally, I'll keep you guys posted on what type of events I ultimately end up running, because it won't just be marathons this year. I am going to probably try to get in a few 5Ks and probably a half marathon or two as well in kind of preparation for a marathon if I ultimately do end up deciding to do one of these two marathons this year. So with that said, I wish you all the best in terms of your own running goals this year. And I look forward to communicating with you all on Strava and via the comment system on YouTube and all of that good stuff. I really wish you all the best in your 2023 running, and take care of yourself.